Tammy, we are now recording.
Okay, that should work better. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Manhattan Community Board 1's Executive Committee meeting. I am Tammy Meltzer. I'm chair of the Manhattan Community Board, and we will be a fairly, I think, fast meeting tonight. That's my goal and hope, and we're going to kick it off right now with Earth Matters. We want to welcome them and thank them for their incredible patience. As many of you may have seen, they have been on our agenda many times. However, they've ended up being postponed to time-sensitive materials. So we're here to welcome them. So Marissa, welcome. It's delightful to have you here as the executive director, and take it away.
Some of which we're involved in, but just wanted to start off by just saying thank you so much for the extraordinary letter of support for community composting in downtown Manhattan. And I guess, we've kind of evolved over why we might want to speak to the board, but it's just really great to touch base and just update you on the work we're doing. We have presented in the past at different committees, but basically we just are alive and well on Governor's Island, even though there has been a shutdown. We're considered essential workers, and we are composting there. And we are very much excited about continuing to expand the work we would do in the community. And the letter of support that you all wrote to us was for a proposal we had for Councilmember Chin to set up 5 new food scrap drop-off opportunities so that there's more access and availability of places for people to recycle in the downtown area. And we'll see where that goes for FY22 funding. And we're also applying next week as part of that infrastructure to get a truck so that we can not only set up food scrap drop-offs where in these 5 areas that are going to be strategically placed if we get the funding, but also to help deliver compost to places like Battery Park, City Conservancy, and other areas that we haven't been able to supply because our budget was cut by over 1/3 last year. So,
what does it look like? What are your plans looking for ahead in 2022? What is the long-term vision for Earth Matters? What, do you have going forward before we open it up to the community for questions?
well, our goal, at least for this year, we're having a strategic planning session for the next 3 years. We hired a consultant who works downtown, Joseph Barreto, so he's part of the community as well. And our goal is to work with our staff and our community members, our advisors, our directors, to understand that together collectively. It's a collective process. In fact, one of the things we wanted to do is ask if potentially a community board member would like to sit in on these 2 visioning sessions that we're going to be having in the next 8 weeks to try to help us understand what might be possible for Earth Matter in the next 3 years. We've been on the island for 12 years. It's our home. It's our only home. And we look forward to working with that vision. I've been working with you in a couple of sessions, and we just want to work with all the island partners to continue to offer the kind of services of zero waste training. And just like you said in the beginning, we see the green infrastructure and job training is really crucial. And we'd like to start treating the industry as resource recycling, changing it away from waste management, and to try to help shift gears as far as how people view what we should be considering resources. And we love doing the educational programming, and thank you so much for putting us in touch with the schools. We've reached out with them, and our vision is to continue to expand our relationships with the downtown community and all New Yorkers who want to come to Governor's Island to learn about sustainability.
I am sure that is a good thing. We'd be delighted if you would like some. We have a lot of people on our community board who are very interested in green measures. So I'll certainly put out a call, send me a note if you don't mind, and Diana can distribute it, and we'll collate some people who would like to sit in on the visioning sessions with you. That would be great.
That'd be so awesome. We're really looking, that's part of our vision, to understand how we can better serve the community. And so having at least one community member that would be, part of that visioning with us would be really, really helpful.
It'd be great. Okay. With that note, let's open it up to community board members for people who have any questions. All right. Seeing no hands, it's a quiet group tonight. I think they might be responsive to my desire to end the meeting quickly. I want to thank you both.
I have a copy of the letter that you sent in support
Perfect.
of Earth Matters. Would you like me to put that up on the screen?
I would indeed.
Keep discussing that, and I'll have that load up in a jiffy.
Okay. Well, I see Betty Kay has her hand up. Betty, you were first. Go ahead.
Thanks. I was wondering what they compost. What kind of items do they accept for composting? Because I know that Battery Park City takes only fresh vegetables and fruits, tea and coffee. And people are often expecting a lot more foodstuffs than that. So I was wondering what they did.
But we start at a somewhat higher level with the idea that anything that was alive or is made from something that was alive can be composted. And beyond that, it's a matter of how you want to manage the process. And we're willing to deal with just about anything. In fact, we have just begun recently to take some of the materials that Battery Park City collects and cannot use themselves. So we're open to just about any organic material in our process. We handle both the landscape debris from the island and 7 or 8 tons of food scrap each week that's collected by Grow NYC, plus all of the source separated organics that come from post-consumer waste on the island during the open season. So that's a whole lot of compostable serviceware and paper products.
It's unusual that people at our scale would accept meat and fish, but we do. And we have a system that has very hot temperatures. In Battery Park City, they feed it to worms. And so they're more, and it's an in-vessel system inside of a building. And so they're limited on those materials based on the feedstocks have to be something that the worms can digest.
Thank you very much. We'll go to Justine and then to Susan. Justine, you're next.
Hi, I guess, and I'm sorry, because this might have been said and I signed in a little bit late, but where can we drop off or is this is in existence, you take it, so where are the bins, or how do we drop it off?
Right now, you can go to Bowling Green on a Tuesday from 8 to 10 when the farmers market's there. And then when the island is open by Taco Vista, when you first come off of Swanson Dock, when you arrive on Governor's Island, there's a bin there. Or you can come to the Compost Learning Center. And the proposal that we have is to work with Downtown Alliance, who we're going to put up the EMZ bins in 3 locations. Well, they were going to do 10, but now the pilot would call for 3. And then we wanted to work with other community partners to establish 2 other strategic places so that the whole downtown area was covered. So we've reached out to not only Battery Park City, but places like Chiang. We work with Fulton Stall Market. If you're a member of that CSA, you can drop off there now. And we've worked with Confucius Plaza, and we've reached out to Southgate as potential places where a food scrap drop-off could get set up. But we're open. We're open to wherever the community would think that is a good site where you get a lot of volume next, starting in July.
That's great. I mean, I will say this is wonderful, and to know that you don't have to be so particular as long as it's something that was once alive, like you said. That's my criteria. I can do that. I can keep that separate. Yeah. Thank you. And is the Battery Park City Authority cooperating with you?
Oh, very much so.
Okay,
much so,
good.
yeah.
And who are you working with there, if I can ask?
Well, we were initially working directly with Ann O'Neill, the
Yeah.
director of horticulture, and Marissa's had contact recently with
Ryan and David.
Okay, that's
the
great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm working with Jasmine, and we're picking up the food scraps from their staff and the meat products that they inadvertently get that they can't feed to the worms now. So it's just a very slow start, but getting that whole system down is we're all about baby steps.
Well, maybe we could even get them to put up, and that's something I can think about pushing through or talking about, maybe getting them to put up a separation. So even if the Battery Park City Authority has a separate bin, so they don't have to separate it out, but people can do it there too. I don't see why they couldn't do that. But thank
We
you.
were gonna do it 5 years ago with the Department of Sanitation, and then they decided that we should only process on the island, and that's why we're going to City Council Member Chen, is because we are very grateful to have the relationship with the Department of Sanitation's compost project, but it's somewhat limited as far as how much funds they have. So they're in full support of us being able to get other funding, but you know, everybody has to buckle down. We lost 2 staff people and a third of our budget, and so if there's anybody out there that can help support it, like Battery Park City by supplying staff, or Downtown Alliance, they would manage 3 of the bins, and they would even bring it over to Governor's Island. So we'd have to just
Okay. So it has to get transferred over to Governor's Island. That makes sense, because that's where your processing plant or whatever you want to call it is. Is that right?
facility, right?
well, but we're saying we could set something up. So that's kind of what this proposal is for, to
Got it.
see if we can expand what we're doing off island for the downtown community.
Thank you, Justine. Moving on to Susan Cole.
I just was going to ask how they relate to Grow New York, which is down at where I go to Bowling Green on Tuesdays. So she answered my question, and thank you. I
Right.
think it's a fabulous place, and they're really nice, and I'm so glad they're there.
Yep, but that has been a Growing My Sea Green market for years, and they have run the food scrap drop off for years, but with the change in funding back in July, we've taken that one over, and I wanted to say that in this past 6 months or so, with the change in funding and going through this ULERT process around development on the island, 2 things have sort of emerged. One, the change in funding and the desire to have greater access across the city has redistributed the resources for making the collections. So now we are actually able to work that Bowling Green market and begin to think about establishing these other locations. And going through the ULERT process has kind of helped us try and define more clearly what we call community scale, and defining that as our backyard, or vice versa, Governor's Island being the backyard of a community that is downtown Manhattan.
That's very good. Thank you.
I think that brings us to Lucian, whose hand is up. Lucian?
Hi, I just want to say that I'm a really big fan, as a person who used to do some vermiculture back in a few years back, we'll say. I think that's a fantastic that you have such a variety of different elements of your composting operation. I think that we certainly have the capacity in our office to help identify additional composting sites within the community district. I was just curious if in your discussions with the Battery Park City Authority, they've ever discussed the area around the community garden, since that's something that's been recently expanded with the culmination of the West Ham Street Bridge project, if there's been any discussion about having any kind of capacity there.
We're happy to talk to David and everybody else there at the authority about that. They've been purchasing compost from us to apply it. And a couple of years ago, when Adam Chopra was there, he had identified the cul-de-sac as a place for drop off and setting up bins there or close to the school there, across from where they have their office. But if you wanted to set up a meeting, we're very happy to talk about different sites. It's just, again, about capacity and about a work plan goal. So we're heading into work plan discussions with Department of Sanitation, and we would very much like to increase it through that budget as well. So we're just trying to go everywhere to understand that the downtown community would be well served if there were more drop-offs. So we really appreciate you plugging for us, and hopefully we'll get funding so that we can make it happen. And maybe Battery Park City can also put some staff energy, and then maybe we can.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Michael Francor. He's got his hand up. Susan, if you don't mind putting yours down.
Oh,
Okay,
no,
guys. Thanks, Tammy. I'll be real quick. I just want to say thanks to Marissa and you guys. I'm so glad that we have you guys in our backyard. I drop off at the Fulton Star Market CSA on Thursdays. So yeah, I'm just, anything that, I personally or that we can do to help, like just let us know as part of the community, because it's so great to have you here and it's such a great mission and it's stuff we need to do. So thanks so much. Oh, actually, you know what? My boyfriend wanted me to ask, do you guys take the compostable, like, like the takeout compostable containers? Do you guys take those things, or are those, because I've heard things that there's some toxic materials in there. Does that ruin your compost if you take those?
Well, there is a technical aspect to that. We want them to be third-party certified, typically by BPI. So there'll be some sort of label on them like that. And then a composter that does accept materials, person-made materials, doesn't make a compost that can be used in certified organic agriculture. But since that's not really our market, we're more interested in seeing compostable products in the market actually being composted.
And again, for us, our main goal and our mission to date, unless we change it with our visioning, is we're about waste reduction and keeping things out of the landfill. And we believe that the bioplastics, if it's what they call PFAS free, which are those chemicals you're talking about, we'd rather do that than try to vie for like an organic farming certification. And as far as we can tell, we grow vegetables, and we think that what we're doing is a sound practice. So we don't have any fears that taking any of those compostables, because it has that label on it, and it's a beautiful label, and we talk to them all the time. And as far as we know, that ingredient that had been in the containers that were keeping them from the grease from making things fall apart is no longer an additive in these certified products. So yes, you can put them in Fulton Stall Market, and we really appreciate all that work. Every Friday we pick them up, and you guys are really robust and doing a great job. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
That's really, so far I don't see any other hands. I think that's really awesome. I see hands up in the public section. So Lucian or Diana, who's ever got control, will go directly in order. Paul M. AES Miller, who I don't know what your first name is, I apologize, and then Anna Chung. Paul, you're first.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. Two quick questions. I'm wondering what your relationship is, or the extent of collaboration with the Battery Park Conservancy, including the farm. I was volunteering a bit there over the summer, and they said I think they said they've sent some compostables to you. So I'm wondering if that's maybe an opportunity to expand partnerships. And then the second question, what do you do with your finished compost?
Good questions, both of them. The Battery Conservancy is people we're dear friends with, and we've struggled all season long to figure out a way to get them a volume of compost. And Marissa didn't mention it, but in our proposal for a truck, it's actually a dual purpose truck. On the one hand, it will have a lift gate in order to haul toters of collected food scrap to the island, but it's also a dump body so that we can haul quantities of bulk compost off the island. Battery Park City Authority, of course, has their own truck. They come to the island and pick up on a regular basis. And we were just dying to get our product out to the Battery Conservancy as well. And otherwise, we've done quite a bit of distribution this year through Green Thumb, the Parks Department program for community gardens. Once a week, we send out a pallet of bags, a cubic yard pallet of bags for distribution. And also, once a week, they send a truck to take away 7 or 8 cubic yards in bulk. And that's all taken out to their Queensbridge compound and redistributed from there.
We've also given this year to the Chinatown bid in downtown area, and we've given a lot to the Downtown Alliance, and they use that in their street tree beds. We work with Ian Olson to do whatever street care in the community gardens in the downtown area as well.
Amazing. I'll just tack on one more comment. As I was volunteering with them, we were ripping out weeds and putting them in trash bags, and it was a little bit heartbreaking to know that there just wasn't the infrastructure to send it to some place like yours for more productive use. So whatever the community board can do to help close that loop, I would think that would be great.
You know, Paul, I would say that the more people, we are consistently advocating because we all agree with you. But the more voices that say it independent and with the community board, the better. Feel free to write our local council person and the borough president, because we'd love to see this expanded beyond CB1. It'd be great, you know, if you're coming over by the boat, CB3 is right next door. You know, let's get it slowly rolled out and back into the mindset of the Parks Department, which seems to have taken a step backwards in the last 2 years.
And one last thing, we didn't mention our primary goal, which is a closed loop on Governor's Island. So they take it, we give some to Grow New York City's teaching garden, and a lot of the material is put back on the landscape of Governor's Island by the horticulturists.
Yeah, what leaves the island is at this point surplus to what the island itself can use.
Fantastic. Let's go to AES Miller. Paul, thank you so much. AES Miller, you are unmuted.
Oh, I just signed up, and I don't know, I don't have a microphone. Can you hear me okay?
You are loud and clear, yes.
Anyway. Oh, okay. My name is Emily Yexin, and I have been in New York City for 30 years. 33 years actually, and I've been very active in CB1 and CB3, which covers part of Chinatown. So basically, I'm just say hi to everyone. It's the first time I'm on this virtual meeting. Yeah, I am glad to listen to everybody else.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Welcome, and hope to see you at many more, virtually or in person as we go on. All right. Thank you very much. We'll move to the last person who has questions, who's Anna Chiang. And I apologize if I didn't get that right. Anna, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Oh, great. Thanks, Tammy. So yeah, I'm Anna Chung, and actually, full disclosure, I'm actually a former apprentice at Earth Matter and volunteer, and also a resident of Chinatown. So I really here am to cheerlead this effort, but also I think reiterate what a lot of people have already said. Like there is a huge need for a program such as this, and also continuing to expand it through CB1 and hopefully to adjacent community boards as well. Marissa, I'm really happy to hear that Confucius Plaza is potentially another location where food scraps could be dropped off. I think, yeah, there. I would be excited if we had, we had an opportunity to drop off food scraps in the Chinatown area and hopefully beyond. So really, that's really why I'm here. I also want to. I also think it's great that Earth Matter. It's be able to, I think there's also often a lot of questions about what you can drop off, what you can't. And I think the way that Earth Matter's been working, it just makes it so much more simple for people and not to have to, think twice about what they can put in the bins. And I think that would just help with adoption. And so I'm excited about that as well. That's it, just here to say hello. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Anna. Thank you for joining us. Feel free to come every week. We're good with, we like having lots of people come. And with that, I think I don't see any other hands up. I want to thank you both for coming. Please send us a note and we will include it in our newsletter. And we're happy to ask a number of our community board members who would like to be a part of the envisioning process with you to get this expanded and provide good, clean, green jobs. There we go. Our pleasure.
Wonderful evening, and thanks so much for having us.
You're welcome. Stay warm. All right, let's go back to our agenda and pull up the next topic. Can you put the agenda back up for me, please? There we go. Okay, so we've got 3 more topics to go over with possible resolutions. The budget cuts are something that is unfortunately part of our new reality moving forward. And I want Lucian to be able to describe what the dialogue and conversation has been for community board budgets looking ahead. And for those who remember or don't remember, our budget cycle is not January to December. It's our budget year ends June 30th. Lucian, take it away.
Thanks, Tammy. So many of you have heard us refer to budget cuts for the community boards. We actually had what's called a program to eliminate the gap. This is a mayoral, essentially a decree effectuated through Office of Management and Budget for all agencies to reduce their operating, for us at least, the operating budget by a certain amount. And for community boards, all 59 had to do an initial peg of 4,000 and then find another 4,000 later on. This was the first one was inconvenient. The second one for a lot of community boards was definitely a squeeze. We luckily had enough operating room to accommodate it, but we know that there's already an $8,000 cut to our budget in the coming fiscal year, and that may increase or decrease according to the city's overall fiscal situation or where they'll end up looking for money. So we're going to see what our council members and mayor value in terms of how community boards are supported or not in this next budget. We had essentially been in a budgetary stasis for a number of years up until this point, and we were fighting to get an increase, but now it seems we'll be fighting just to tread water for this year and perhaps the next couple of fiscal years. So it's very important for us to just keep reinforcing the value of community boards. And I know that personally, Community Board 1, just in terms of helping DDC, EDC, and many other projects be more efficient, we probably found savings for them far greater than what has been cut and far greater than what we've asked for an increase. But I am partial. But that's essentially the state of play in a nutshell.
So let's open it up for questions, because I know the we may have some. Any questions? Betty?
Thanks. Do I recall correctly from some past discussion on this? Are there any mechanisms for raising money that can be used in lieu of what's being lost?
So we do have what's considered or commonly referred to as a street fair account. Community boards that were savvy enough and fortunate enough to have street fairs in the district, and there's other agencies that do this as well, have a number of street fairs that are put forth in their name and do generate some income for a special account that can be used for a very narrow set of things. One thing that account is not permitted to be used for is salaries. So, and that makes sense because if we were to depend on that for salaries this year, somebody would have to go because we made almost no money with street fairs, and so we could only really use it as other than personnel budgetary items. So supplies, consultant contracts, and other sorts of sundry items, but not for salary. So that's one way, but we're very narrow in how we fund that account. We generally dissuade direct contributions to that in favor of funding it almost completely by street fair revenues.
Betty, you good for that?
Yes, I'm going to assume from you, Tammy, that there's no interest in broadening how money is raised if there end up being cuts and even deeper cuts.
I would not make that assumption. I'm always going to be open for, having been a former salesperson for so long and a director, I am always open for ways to make more money for the community board, because what we've also seen, unfortunately, is there's a limited number of bandwidth that the office has, and we are extremely fortunate to have Diana as our urban planner. But we do need on times, last quarter of 2020 showed us we need some extra support. So it is concerning to me that we are draining down our resources without, because of COVID-19, a way to refund basically what I'm going to call it the consultant bank. So yeah, I'm not opposed to it as long as it falls within the rules and regs that we are allowed to do. Okay.
We have a full complement of letters and guiding documents from the borough president's office and the conflict of interest board, kind of setting out how we are able to do this, and so we follow that quite tightly. Though there are some avenues which we are exploring outside of street fairs, but in a similar vein, holiday markets is kind of like the next step, and that has been looked at as a way to either augment or supplement the monies from street fairs if consistent, stable, and profitable holiday market is to be established. That could eliminate a couple of street fairs that we have in our name sometime in the future, but that would really need to prove its mettle over a number of seasons before we would basically kill the golden goose, because once the way that the street fairs are worked out is that once you let them go, you can never get them back. So we are very, very cautious in safeguarding those for the short term and the long term.
Exactly. Okay, we're going to go to Detta, and then Justine, and then our treasurer, Ms. Mariana.
Hi. Yeah, this is Detta. I just wondered the $8,000 that needed to be cut, what percentage of the overall budget does that represent?
Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you. Perhaps Mariama might know off the top of her head.
What was the question? How much is the consultant?
No, how much is the PEG, the $8,000 PEG for fiscal year 22 as a percentage of the entire budget?
Oh, no, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah. It's not huge. It's not huge, but a lot of community boards are basically running, with their budget zeroed out. They have, three full-timers and a part-timer, or full-time staff members. And so there's very little fat to cut for them. We have 3 full-time employees and no part-time staff. And so there was a little bit of a cushion that we had, that we were hoping that if the community boards received a budget increase, that we would be able to hire a part-time with benefits or a full-time staff member. But it serves that cushion provided us with, not us having to make some really difficult decisions during this. But overall, the fact that community boards are seen as a place to find savings does not bode well for us moving forward in the future.
So that brings us to Justine and Mariama. And Mariama, you're the treasurer. Jump in anytime.
Okay, and my question's just a quick one. So, Lucian, you talked about the holiday markets and street fairs. Street fairs cannot fund salaries. Could holiday markets fund salaries?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and then the question is, why can't we do both? How many street fairs are we allowed to have? And then if we throw out, and also, I mean, again, assuming life gets back to normal, and when we do a holiday market, why can't we do it all? Just
holiday markets. Well, it's no. I mean, we essentially, the community board is able to bring on a promoter who manages all the street fairs on our behalf, and they take a portion of the revenues. They find the people who will man the booths and all that blah blah blah. And so in the past couple of years, our promoter, who is Joe Giovanni of what is it? Phantom? No, not Phantom. Lucy, are you on?
Mardi Gras.
Mardi Gras. Thank you so much, Mardi Gras. I keep seeing the masks as the logo. He's been knocking on a lot of doors. We've looked at places and talked to the street activity permit office about it. They're not really giving us the latitude that we need to establish a good holiday market. We looked at private property owners, and that has shown some interest, but nothing has really yielded any kind of real planning talks. They'll give us an idea of what revenues would look like. The current strategy is looking to agencies that have the ability to do permitting, to build money in partnership. So, for example, working with the Department of Parks and Recreation to find ways to, generate money for their operation as well as for our operations. So by working together, we could possibly do that. But it's a large bureaucratic machine, and so they've sent something down the chain, and it will be some time and a lot of cajoling for that to go full circle and us to have real talks with them, which is complicated further by the pandemic.
Yeah. I remember the good old days when they'd have holiday markets on the bridges that would go over West Street. But I'm thinking that Brookfield or the Authority, or I don't know who was the sponsor of those things, but those were
Brookfield.
Okay.
Those were Brookfield events. I know what you're talking about. That was pre-9/11. Yeah.
Oh yeah, long time ago.
It was Brookfield.
Exactly. Mariama, and then Paul Goldstein, and then Betty, if your hand is still up, we'll come back to you then.
If none of us here are aware of the legality of maybe like an online holiday store, maybe like a silent auction or something, I'd like to research it and look into it. There's also an organization on Broad Street. I don't know that they're operating right now, and I can't even think of the name right now, but they work with students up to the age of 21 or 22, I believe. So it's like teens and adolescents, and they send out interns. They have to do their resume. They have to, buy suits and the appropriate clothing, and it's kind of like an internship based on their qualifications, or at least novice qualifications. And they get sent to these different corporations, and the organization pays them. So they are earning an income weekly, but we wouldn't have to pay them. So like I said, I can't remember the name. They're on Broad. I'd like to look into something like that too, and maybe it'll be helpful.
We have a relationship with an organization called Pencil, and they fund the essentially, I guess, the stipend is what they call it, for recent high school graduates or people who are in the early stages of undergraduate degree to come and get experience. And we've had, before the pandemic, I think we participated for 2 years in a row, and we had some really stellar people and some very solid people come work with us and provide us support over the summer. And they did a number of really interesting projects for us. But the pandemic 2020, we didn't have anyone, so we were in the planning stages of that. And then they're starting to reach out again, but so they're kind of reorganized to do a remote experience. So we'll see what that looks like. But as long as I'm happy to bring people in, as long as they're either A, satisfying their community service requirements for high school, or B, they're provided a stipend by an organization, because I'm not a believer in unpaid internships.
Yeah, no, these are definitely paid. What I was thinking about, but I'll call around, I guess, the borough president's office, for starters, to again investigate or research the legality of whether or not we're able to do some sort of online sales, or like I said, like a silent auction or something, perhaps, where we could essentially have the holiday sales.
Yeah, the only snag I would see is, about the auction, I don't know, but just in terms of getting things to auction off means that we may have to ask people for things, and that's maybe where.
Right. We can't ask for donations. I do know that. Right. We cannot. People can give us stuff, but we can't ask for it.
I can't find this is Pat. I've run an auction before. It's a lot of work, Mariama. And yeah, we would have to get it, and we would have to run it, unlike Mardi Gras that does everything.
Yes, I understand that. I don't know why I'm echoing. I apologize. I only have on one thing, so I don't know why that's happening. But yeah, I ran some for, the schools, like 234, IS 89. I've done it before for large groups of people. Of course, that was in person, and this would be virtual, so that is different, something I'm familiar with, but I'm willing to look into it.
I'm thrilled, and I accept all of your efforts. And
okay.
To work with you on it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm on it.
I'm gonna stay quiet on that. Paul, you go. You're next.
Okay, well, you guys were actually talking about one of the issues I wanted to raise, which was interns. The community board has a history of having interns. I think we should consider that. After all, even Lucy Acevedo started out as an intern for the community board. So,
be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I was biting my lip as I was saying that, Lucy. No, but Lucy just shows you what you could get out of a good intern. So we should think about that. I think nowadays you have to pay interns, as far as I know. But in any event, you already mentioned some of the possibilities. I think colleges also sometimes will work with you and provide interns. So that's another thing. And I would just say that, the whole notion of having city agencies possibly, not be that cooperative in terms of going along with ideas that we may have. I could just tell you, when we started with the street fairs, we had tremendous resistance. We were the first ones to do anything like that. But frankly, it came about sort of like now. It was a time of necessity and an act of necessity. It came about right after 9/11 when we really needed to do a lot more things down here. And I think you can make the same arguments now as we recover from COVID and try to repopulate buildings that are empty, try to help our retailers start back up, and play our role in all that kind of stuff. I think we can make a very strong argument. And knowing Joe Giovanni a little bit, he would probably be open if there's a possibility, to work with us in ways that we would make some money, and obviously he as the sponsor would as well. That would probably have to be bid out, but we could deal with that down the road. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Elizabeth is next. Thank you.
Hi. So I don't know if Lucian actually already said this, but I may not have heard it, but I just want to clarify, are there any other restrictions in terms of us raising money? I know you talked about the street fairs cannot pay for the salaries, but what other, just so that we can kind of get creative and brainstorm about what can be done to raise more money, are there any other restrictions that we don't already know, that you haven't already mentioned, that we should consider?
I don't think we've really run up against any other restrictions other than salary. I don't believe there's anything that that if we can purchase it with our OTPS funds, that's other than personnel services funds, in our normal budget, then it's something that we could purchase through our street fair budget, as long as it's a reasonable item for OTPS. When we received the additional OTPS funding, a kind of grant from the city council for 2 years, there's the $42,500 grant. We were also not allowed to use that on personnel services or staff salaries, and they also had initially very few restrictions, but then after CB1 and Brooklyn bought a car, they told us no cars. So there's certain things that I think that maybe OMB, if the purchases were large enough, OMB may have an issue with it. And then the other side of it is that once you start getting over a certain cost, there's a little bit more scrutiny that comes in. The comptroller's office, if it's a contract for services, the comptroller is going to want to have a bit more of an in-depth, as Elizabeth, as we had to do a very thorough contract approval procedure through the personnel committee, and that's whenever you break $20,000. So there are additional controls that are applied once you get higher in cost, and there's only so much paper you can buy, honestly.
What about, couldn't a consultant hypothetically be hired as a sort of a staff member?
Legally, you're not supposed to use a consultant to do things that you would just otherwise have staff do. I think that would perhaps get us in trouble with the union. When we do our consultant, I was advised that when we have our consultant contract, to make sure that it's a very specific goal that's not kind of listed under the general scope of work of a community associate, or the titles that you would typically see in the community board office. So that's what was told to me.
So I think where we're going, and Paul and Elizabeth and Pat and Miriam and everybody who has said something thus far, I think where we were going for the conversation for potential resolution was whether or not we wanted to do a resolution asking for a stop to the budget cuts to community boards, because this is going to be.
Yes. Yes, we do.
Okay. So I think it's a really very simple, very straightforward. Lucian would do the wordsmithing on it, but it basically is just requesting that the mayor's office cease and desist from cutting any further cuts for community boards for year 2021 or 2022. Now, we're in the home stretch of 2021, but I don't, unless Lucian tells me otherwise, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't try and dip back in again.
I mean, it goes to, I think, I mean, we all understand that there's a crisis, but I do feel like it goes to disinterest in community engagement, you know, when
Correct.
the community board isn't supported. So I think it's important that we say something.
I would agree. Do I hear any other? Feel free to unmute yourselves for cross conversation or dialogue. Just if anyone says, do I hear? I'm trying to get a temperature of the executive team to say yay or nay. Is this a resolution we want to pass?
Yes.
Yes, I would agree with that too. I think we
Yes,
need to
Tammy.
do this.
Call
Okay.
the question.
There we go. Okay, Lucian, you ready? Uh-oh. I did hear
Yeah,
baby noise.
I'm pulling up. Yeah, I had to hand him off. He was getting fussy. All right, so we do have a quorum, and I am ready.
Roll call it and let's go. It's very simple.
Meltzer,
Yes.
Blank,
Yes.
Cole,
Yes.
Kucha,
Yes.
Goldstein,
Yes.
James,
James, yes.
Kay,
Okay, yes.
Lewinson,
Yes.
Mahoney,
I'm sorry, I have to abstain.
Moore, Patricia,
Yes,
and
more yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, the motion carries.
Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to the next thing, which is municipal elections and polling site task force. So we were asked to participate in, and I think some of you have seen some information that has gone out. They're looking to do early voting and other poll sites. There are schools that are, in the light of COVID-19, not particularly pleased to be polling sites. So they're looking for more neutral sites. Of course, all of us would say any number of hotels and open retail space, but we've been told that the Board of Election doesn't like using those because they don't have enough money to pay for them. So, and that they can't get a guarantee to do it year over year. Be that as it may, I don't really have any comeback for that. There are two questions that are before us on this discussion. One, would anybody like to volunteer to be part of the polling site task force, right? And two is a question of how the elections are and when they are. So for example, all the municipal elections, as people probably know, we have a primary in June this year and elections this year. And every single seat in the city is up for change. So borough president, city council, the mayor, there's a lot of change going on. So the question starts to become, voter turnout is a little low because it's not a presidential election or a governor election, but is that a good thing? Do we think that this is the best time for elections or not? So hands up and shout out.
As opposed to what, Tammy? The best time for elections as opposed to?
Doing it on even years. So right now your municipal elections are on odd years and federal and state are on even years.
Oh, I see. We should do it all together is what you're saying. That or as an option. Okay.
It's a question. It's a question for discussion.
And
are we
I have
saying
a
going
little
forward or
additional-
for this year?
It
Are we
would
saying
probably have to be not for the 21 elections, but future elections after the 21 election.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a little late to change this
Yeah.
year's elections.
So how would the transition occur? Who would stay longer?
Right. That would certainly have to be something that has worked out. But in the past, elections used to be shifted a lot. But I just want to give you guys some numbers just to give you a sense. I think from a turnout perspective, and there's a lot of discussions about how many Americans do certain percentage of the Senate represent versus the majority of the Senate represent. In a similar vein, in terms of how many New Yorkers actually vote for our elected officials, it's a similarly depressing number. So for the Democratic primary in 2017, let's see, let me just pull up this, just verify. 2017, only 312,000 people voted in the mayoral primary, or about 14% of the city's registered Democrats. That is a vanishingly small number of people to choose the headliner of a major party's line for the general election. In the general, and I'm pulling up the stats here. There, in 2016, there were 8,500,000 people in New York City. There's about 5 million voters in the city, and 4,500,000 of them are considered to be active. So out of that 4.6 million active voters, the early reports from the Board of Elections showed that only 1 million of them voted in the mayoral election. So that means that only 726,000 people had voted for the mayor out of 8.5 million people. And so that's 8.5% of the population at large chooses who governs the city of New York. Those are really poor numbers for any kind of democracy. So I think that the challenge here that Tammy's putting in front of you is, can we do better? If the municipal elections are at the same time as a presidential election, or even congressional elections, that would be a much higher turnout and more of the city participating in a really important a determination of how we live our lives in the city. So it's just something that I think we wanted to put on your radar for discussion. It's certainly a long discussion, but just in terms of democracy and how many people are able to take part, I think it's an important thing to consider.
Knowing and understanding this, it's, we have some time to have a dialogue on it, but we put it off and off and off. So it's one of the things, as long as we were talking about polling task force sites and things like that, it would be good to feel a temperature in the room. So hands up for questions, comments in the room. Betty, go for it.
I think probably like many, I'm actually quite conflicted about it. Part of me says, great democracy, have more people out there. The other part, the realistic part of me says, why are so few voting? If they're really not engaged, they're really not interested in finding out the issues, do I really want them to get out and randomly just pick a lever? Not really.
Yeah.
That's my conflict.
Exactly. All right. So we're going to go to Colin, Justine, Paul, Mariama.
Sorry.
Hands I see so far. Go ahead, Colin.
We're talking about doing municipal only elections on presidential years or on even years? Or both?
It would end up being both. It's even years.
Even years. But the mayor doesn't necessarily have to be at the same time as a presidential election. That's certainly up for discussion. But I think that if people are coming out and they're voting, there's higher turnout during years where there's congressional, Senate, and presidential elections.
Yeah, no, I know, and as you all know, I've run a number of elections, and I'm diametrically opposed to this idea for a variety of reasons, because you're also depressing turnout for other elections that we don't have control over, especially with 4-year terms for mayor. You're depressing off-year congressional midterms as well. So it's a little concerning to me. I'd love to see a study on it, but I can't be in favor of this. Sorry.
No, that's okay. This is a point of a discussion. That's why I call them, there's no movement necessarily. You know, if we need to get more data, then that's something that we can advocate for, you know, before we make a decision. It's to open the dialogue.
And also,
Right.
someone who has, again, run for office and been in these and run these campaigns before, I have no sympathy for people who can't get up off their ass and exercise their democratic right to vote. I really don't. I mean, I think Betty just
I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but I hear you.
Yeah, it's, you know, people have fought and died for the right to vote. They've also fought and died for the right not to vote. But if you're not involved, I don't feel sorry for you. I'm not going to make things easier for you to get involved. That's my part of it.
Okay. Justine, then Paul, then Mariama.
So yeah, I kind of have to agree because, but I guess I have a question for Colin first. I don't understand what you're saying. If everything moved to even years, that means we would never have elections on odd years.
Yeah, I was trying to wrap my head around it and understand what the proposal was, or what the.
I think it would be everything, but at the end of the day, look at how much work it is to try to understand who the I mean, and it's a worthwhile work. Don't get me wrong, but even for this year, for the primaries coming up and then the election, there's so much turnover.
Yeah,
there's so many at stake. But you're right. Why should? More importantly, people need to understand that truly their governance is decided in the primaries, for example, whether it's the Democratic or the Republican. They don't understand that. And how do we get that word out there to them?
Right, and as an old-fashioned political monster like I am, if you're running an off-year campaign, you go and you earn every single vote that you get because turnout is and has been traditionally so low. I mean, my personal feeling that does not represent the community board is I don't like AOC, but give her credit for going out there and earning every single one of those primary votes because she worked for it. So, you know, all the power to people who run off-year elections or low turnout elections or primary elections for going out there and talking to people. Every single vote counts in a low turnout election. And you could actually argue that those people are even more scrutinized because they're working for 14% or 20% turnout. So I personally find those elections more fun and more interesting because you actually get to know people who work harder for your vote.
And you can actually focus on people, assuming you want to pay attention.
Exactly right.
So yeah, I mean, I guess I would have to say, and then as Betty said, if people can't, or actually you said it too, Colin, if you can't get off your ass to get involved, you know, really, it's true. It's true. I mean,
Okay.
Yeah.
Why the hell do I do this every night, right?
Here we are.
Speaking to the audience. Okay. Paul Goldstein, who, again, other than Colin, Paul has probably the most experience of any, actually more than Colin, no offense, Colin. Just Paul, you have the floor.
I have to agree with the other speakers that this is probably an idea that would create a lot of problems. I mean, Tammy, you yourself was starting to mention all the offices that are up for election this year. So in other words, there's already a big ballot for people to go through. And sometimes there are these very minor posts like these district leaders and all these other things on the ballot. So, and judges are on the ballot. I mean, could you imagine the size of the ballot if you put every one of those things and all the statewide election posts and all the federal? And then one other thing that comes to my mind is, I would go out of my mind if I had to listen to all the commercials during 1 year cycle of every candidate who wants your attention. I mean,
thank you. I almost took my coffee on that one.
Plus, imagine like a guy, again, my opinions do not reflect that of the community board. They're only my opinions. Right now, Andrew Yang is up 20 points. So, but he still has to go out and work for every single one of those votes in an off year. So if, you know, someone like an outsider, like someone like Andrew Yang ran on an even year, that guy would have an easier job getting in. So it just, you know, just a random observation by this person, not representing the board.
Okay.
And just one other thing I would mention is that if we want to try to boost turnout, perhaps trying to recommend that mail ballots be made permanent, because that obviously drives up turnout among different groups, people who have a hard time getting to the polls. I mean, certainly this year, with all the uncertainty about people, even by November, if everyone's going to be able to get to the polls or feel comfortable in a setting with big lines of people possibly in there, et cetera, et cetera. So we could, if anyone's interested, recommend that.
All right, Mariama, you're next.
I also agree with the other speakers, and I don't have any, while I don't have any experience running elections, I have worked on a number of campaigns, so to speak, getting people to register, and as well as working at polling sites. I had done it, of course, a million years ago as a young person, and then recently jumped back in after the primaries when I saw how many people had been unable to vote. And I specifically asked to be put in an area of, you know, an ethnic area, and I was put in, it was Congressional District 65, which is my district, but basically, I guess, Community District 3. So there were a lot of immigrants, there were a lot of Asians, a lot of seniors, a lot of Latinx people. And these were people who, again, even the seniors, specifically wanted to vote in person. So I was glad to be able to be there, willing to stand in line even during the pandemic, but many of whom only wanted to vote for president, were not interested in voting down ballot for whatever reason. So, I mean, I would love to do this additional, you know, data search, research that we can, you know, seeking out where else, other information that maybe we can gather on this. I'm not sure it's merely a problem of getting people out there. You know, I've just witnessed them being out there and hearing from them that all they care about is, you know, voting for one presidential candidate or another in many cases.
So these are really good data points. And so I can definitely go back and look for more information, but I'm also kind of detecting that the executive committee seems to be more interested in, you know, general ease of voting measures like automatic, perhaps, you know, early voting, voting by mail, and perhaps automatic voter registration.
It's a great.
Yes. Absolutely, yeah. I would.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Actually, I heard nothing but yes, yes, and yes on that. And if that's the case, we can get some data and do a resolution next month on it, I think would be good. So we can bring in some data about how many people did mail-in ballots and, you know, have information across, because I do think I agree with everyone on the call thus far. Making it easier for people to participate is the goal, no matter what. And if we're not touching the elections in terms of changing dates, but we're finding ways to make permanent, easy access that have secure ways for people to vote, then that's great.
I'm still undecided, and this is my personal opinion, but I'm still undecided on mail-in. I'd love to talk to Paul about that offline. I'm kind of an old-fashioned guy, but I agree that anything to get better access to voting, I'm totally for.
Okay. So, Lucian, I think if we can maybe have the Board of Elections come with some stats next month, invite them to March to talk to us about mail-in ballots and other forms of, you know, things like that, we can come to a good way to find as many options as we can possibly advocate for to get people off their butts to vote.
And Tammy, can I speak? Because coming from Illinois, which is a state which has unlimited write-in ballots as well as early voting, I think you'll find there is a lot more voting that goes on because whether it's good or bad, people travel on business. There are lots of very practical reasons. If they just have a little bit of leeway in the day they vote or how it's easier.
I completely agree, and I kind of also put it back to when you take a look at college kids. They have the right to vote, and many of them don't because they're not home in November. And that is just, just doesn't seem to make any sense. If you can vote by mail, they should be able to vote by mail, like every other adult. Okay, thank you. Betty, if you have a contact for stats from that, we'll take that. That would be awesome. All right, and with that, I think we'll close this topic down and move on to COVID-19 pandemic memorial. So much like we've had discussions on CB1, and we said that we should have it when everything was done, we'd have a ticker tape parade for essential workers. I think all of us were optimistic last year that perhaps this might not drone on quite as long as it has, or at least many of us were optimistic. The pandemic has lasted much longer. The tolls have been much higher. There is optimism, thankfully, finally in sight for getting people vaccinated and potentially things getting back to a normal state by the end of this year. With that in mind comes the discussion always of a pandemic memorial, which will probably be done somewhere in the city and probably somewhere. Do we want to discuss, because we are the seat of City Hall in CB1, a location that is accessible to all, that represents all, and having it within CB1? Instead of being reactive, do we want to, somewhere around the Canyon of Heroes, suggest something? Susan.
Well, I think the mayor hates us anyway. So he would like to do anything that either would cause us more traffic or more congestion or anything. I'm not sure we want to be the first ones to volunteer, although I think there should be some honor. I'm not saying it in that way, but I'm feeling that the mayor has let us down tremendously. And I don't know. I just have real trouble with all of that.
Well, funny that I'm going to go to Pat. I see your hand up next. The one thing I will tell you is the last 5 minutes of the Battery Park City Authority board meeting, it was sort of commented on that the governor was thinking about doing something potentially in Battery Park City as another additional memorial somewhere in the park. Considering that we don't have mass transit that gets there, it's not in the middle of the beating heart of the city. I'd rather be the one to propose something that works in CB1 if we want something in CB1. I wouldn't mind being part of City Hall Park. You're up, and then Alice, and then Colin.
Pandemic has hit the entire city. Why are we always a community that these memorial? Why can't they put it uptown? Why can't they put it on Roosevelt Island? They have FDR out there. Why can't, I don't understand why it always has to be in Lower Manhattan. But okay, that's all I have to say.
Who was next? Susan went, Pat went, Alice, Colin, Justine, Mariama.
Hi, I just want to also apologize because I have to come and go in this meeting, but yeah, I agree with Pat. I mean, you're obviously going to draw attention to having it here if you start to, identify a space, but I appreciate the consideration. I think it's, a worthwhile one. I might recommend that we actually maybe advocate for a, public design competition where designers and folks would consider the right place for it, what it would be. It's not necessarily be a monument. It could be a million things that could move around the city. Who knows what people could consider. So maybe we want to just open up the idea to a broader concept of just what this might be, some sort of memorial, rather than a specific spot that's going to have a sort of thing stuck in it. So it's just, and you might want to work with.
I like that idea. That sounds like a great idea. I mean, it goes along with the idea. It's just, again, finding a way that we opine so it doesn't end up put on us versus moving it forward. So Colin, Justine, Mariama, Then back to Betty.
Throw out the Van Allen Institute does a lot of these kind of public design competitions, and as you know, so that's a group you could talk to before you launch the idea.
Well, we could launch the idea that we want a public design competition, that we think that it's a meritorious thing for the city to create a public design contest to cite something somewhere in all of Manhattan, or cite some type of, again, cite something.
All of the city. This is 5 boroughs.
Yeah, 5, exactly. All right, Colin, Justine, Mariama, Betty.
Yeah, just to that point, the 5 boroughs thing, I again, we have a lot of monuments downtown, but it occurs to me that I don't think that a lot of the people who are most adversely affected by COVID are living in downtown Manhattan. Probably the outer boroughs is a little bit more appropriate, but that's my only casual observation here.
I would agree with you. I mean, we clearly, yeah, I hear you. All right, Justine, Mariama, Betty.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, Colin. And I love the idea of what Alice suggested, doing some sort of a competition. And then, yes, in the as we make our suggestion, say it should be focused on the hardest hit areas in the city. Because I do sadly think that if there's a void, they'll stick it in Battery Park City, not because it belongs here, but because the governor can. And that sucks.
Honestly, that's what I want to get ahead of. Let's have some real forethought and planning on that from everybody in the city.
Sandy, just one
Mariama, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, one thing I forgot to say, that we should absolutely take the credit we deserve for suggesting the first responders parade when it happens, because it was this committee that suggested it, and the mayor stole it. I'm saying that on the record. Bye-bye.
Just one quick comment on what was said. The reason the governor may not want to do anything in Battery Park City at this stage, because he's being blamed for killing all those poor, senior citizens in nursing homes. So does he really want to build a memorial and be associated with it, or bring attention to one at this stage? Anyway,
oh my God, he's so arrogant. I don't think he cares, Paul. If he just would have said he was sorry, he screwed up. He just should have just said, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I thought I was making a good choice. It turned out not to be. Hindsight is everything. But no, he's so arrogant.
Paul, to be quite frank, I wouldn't be surprised if he put it a block away from the one old age home we have. Just saying, on the west side. All right. Mariama, Betty.
I love Alice's idea, and I was going to say something similar to Colin. Actually, the COVID numbers, not only in the city, but all over the country, are higher in minority communities, and any memorial should be to them and near them. There are a number of places in other boroughs where it could be. There's a huge parks, as well as like the zoo. There's major tourist attractions in the Bronx. Same thing in Brooklyn, Prospect Park, whatever. But if it has to be over here, I say City Hall. I like your idea, or Federal Plaza. It's a national problem. Put it in Federal Plaza.
So we could, if I'm taking notes on this, do a resolution saying that we request that the city host some sort of design competition and think broadly about the 5 boroughs, something that may not be necessarily stationary, and include federal as well as city property.
Yeah, and focus on the most hardest hits areas too. And
That's a very good statement, Tammy.
Yeah, I love it. And
Okay.
it basically says, and without saying it, are you doing this for lip service, or are you really doing it to memorialize people?
Correct. All righty, Betty, your hand is up.
Yes, I was going to say, I agree with what you said. I was going to say also that the first responder parade does belong in CB1, Community District 1, because of its history of ticker tape parades down here for celebrations. However, for the flame flip reason, it does not belong down here, because we were one of the least hard hit areas in the city, and it needs to reflect the stories of those where it was experienced most.
quite frankly, I don't understand why. I mean, I love the Canyon Heroes. I love doing ticker tape parades in Lower Manhattan. We are uniquely beautiful location, but I mean, for gosh sakes, Broadway goes all the way from the Bronx on down, kind of a thing. Why aren't you picking a street that goes through a variety of communities and operate it more like a Thanksgiving parade where it hits, dozens of blocks versus a short, stint.
Tradition.
Yeah. No. Okay.
I know it's because it's by City Hall. But
yeah.
Sorry, Timmy. Is this
How
in
about next to
response?
Mother Cabrini?
Oh, don't start. Okay, Colin.
Is this in response to a letter or a request of some kind?
No, it's in response that the governor apparently was having dialogue. It was at the very end, literally after all the business session was pretty much done. The chair of the Battery Park City Authority mentioned that he had been in discussions with the governor about potentially having some sort of pandemic memorial. And my head sort of exploded and I said, why would you put that in Community Board 1 in Rockefeller Plaza or even in Wagner Park or anywhere in Battery Park City? Because this particular pandemic memorial should be
In the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens. That's,
maybe I mean there's so many things that you could do, and why we always think of plaques and memorials and statues and things like that. We don't do anything that's really intriguing or interactive in today's technology that can grow with society is a little confusing to me, but
the reason why I asked is if there's actually something for us to respond to, which I'm looking for here. I would love a nicely written letter from you expressing all these things, saying, well, we would love to honor those who died and the first responders and all that. It's more appropriate that it goes to where people were actually most affected. However, give us a parade. No, but seriously, no, we should do a letter if there's something to respond to.
I think the response is we've received nothing official. It was a conversation made at a board meeting, but what we can do for CB1 is call the mayor in conjunction with the governor to form a competition that includes the 5 locations throughout the 5 boroughs.
Yeah.
So it's a way to respond, kind of like the ticker tape parade. It's about taking a joke or a comment, putting it out there, throwing it against the wall and saying, you know what, we love this idea. We want to host it. Well, we love the idea of a pandemic memorial, but we also don't think that, we think it should be inclusive and equitable and not in the whitest neighborhood of New York City.
Totally agree. Yeah. And we
for a pandemic that had the harshest effects on the minority community. So if we all agree on this, we will wordsmith it tonight and have it ready for full board based on the dialogue. I'll work with Lucian on it. Is there any questions from anybody so we can take a vote and then move on to committee reports?
Just as long as the letter reminds people that it was our idea to have the parade.
It's going to be a reso asking them to fund a commission to cite locations throughout, that's representative of the scope of the pandemic. Okay, everybody good with that? Do I hear a call for a question and an approval to do a reso on that?
Call for a question.
Second.
All right.
Yep, we're good.
Since we know who's here, we're just going to go yays, nays, unless Lucian has a different idea.
No, anyone abstaining? Anyone opposed? Anyone recusing themselves? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Thank you so much. It's 7:26. We've had a big agenda. Let's do committee reports. You're going to be listed no more than 5 minutes. If you don't have anything to say, save it all for the meeting tomorrow if it's not controversial. We'll start off with Alice, if she's still with me, and then Justine, and then Susan.
Yes, I am. Thanks. Nothing to report. Come February 22nd, it's an important meeting. We're going to hear about 250 Water Street, and moreover, all the resiliency plans are going to be given an update from the Office of Resiliency and EDC. So it's going to be a good meeting for those of you interested. What I did want to just mention was 240 Greenwich Street, the POPs inside the building there that's up for, being privatized. If you, we've gained a little time. There was a City Planning Commission meeting and they actually did not go forward with a decision because of all the articles that have recently published. I guess that gave them pause. It's an excellent opportunity to please write the City Planning Commission, the Manhattan Borough President, and our council member Chin as to exactly what you think about the privatizing of that space. If you don't do that, it'll likely go anyway. So you have a window here. Just a quick email as to how you feel about that idea. It seemed like the community board was pretty clear on it, but the commissioners at the meeting had asked to hear from the public, that they didn't know what the history was on that site, and they wanted to hear from the public. And this is our opportunity to let them hear. So please go ahead and write if you would do so. If you're
Do you
interested.
do you have a draft or something you'd like us to say?
I'm happy to draft something. I'll have Tammy look at it and happy to put.
I think
put it
that
forward.
would be great. How about that?
Okay,
That
I will
is
do that.
perfect. Yes, and we'll make that available from the office. So yes.
And then who you want? I mean, it should go to Chin, Brewer, all of our people, right?
Okay, yeah,
Chin,
absolutely.
It should go to Chin, Brewer, Glick, and Stringer.
And Marissa Lago, the chair of the City Planning Commission, and the commissioners asked for it, so we are responding to their request because they don't know what's going on. Thank you.
Yes, I love the answer that we're answering their request. Be
Right,
careful.
there you go. Anyway,
Exactly.
I'm going to run. Thanks. Bye. Thanks.
Bye, Alice. Okay, Justine, then Susan.
Okay,
Justine, then Susan. Yeah.
I will be quick. All right. So we came up with language for the proposed signage for Oval Park, Pump House Park, which seemed to be agreeable to everybody. Lucian, I forget if we were going to send it to him. We got to talk about that. But we did come up with a conclusion. We did not talk about the CARES Act. We're talking about that tomorrow night in part in the quality of life meeting. West Thames Park and the gardens and everything else, that's opening up soon. But as I look out my window, the walkway on the sidewalk by 225 Rector is still closed, but to be fair to them, it's closed because of the snow at this point and they can't take it down. They made some nonsensical reasoning about the scaffolding that's there, that they can't open the sidewalk because the scaffolding is there for 225, which to me makes no sense. The whole point of scaffolding is to protect you so you can walk underneath it. But that's a discussion, and with the snow was still there. What else? We also talked about, that was kind of it. The biggest thing was the ferries, and we had some very interesting perspectives brought to the committee and to bear, because the ferry that's going from St. George's Place in Staten Island to go to Brookfield to go up to Hudson Yards on the upper west side-ish, upper west side. We had people for the ferry, against the ferry. It's kind of a bit of a waste of time being anything about it because they're pushing through with it. It is very heavily subsidized, and it seems like we really can't do too much about it. They did agree to come back and report to us about the pedestrian management. And that's kind of it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
let's see what's next, Susan.
Very quickly, two big items. The first one was 181 Duane Street. Has a new owner. The place was Sermonetta, and people had a lot of trouble with it because it was serving liquor without a liquor license. But you could not understand the new owner. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. We put a lot of stipulations in, but I'm not easy about that resolution. And the other one we postponed, which was 456 Greenwich Street, which is a hotel, a high-end hotel with the snazziest room by the roof, is going to rent for $40,000 a night. It was a lot of, this guy's going to open in 22, and I postponed it and said we need the community and we have to have a meeting around this to see what we can work out. And there's some prior history with SLA, and as Tammy says, benefit to the community, a place on the roof with loud and whatever. We just have to figure that out. We're not, I don't think we're going to allow it. We have to really stand firm. Plus it can have 1,000 people there all at once. So it's really very complicated. So that's it.
But I wanted to say thank you very much for the work the committee was doing and the recognition that they will come back and work with us. If that's the pro forma that we have with large things like that, that they come to us with a large amount of time and they're willing to work with the community, they will be an extremely easy transition for them. So I'm thrilled with that. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure, Tammy. I had to shuffle along. I had to tap dance a little because I knew we couldn't come to any resolution, and we'll be lucky to have it by May, and that's what my goal is.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
Thank you, Susan. Next is going to be, well, Pat's coming. So Paul, you've already gone for the month. You and Betty are next in that order.
Okay, let's see, we met just yesterday. We don't have any resolutions. The items that we took up are ongoing actions by the city. They're working on a project called Gateways to Chinatown on Canal Street, where they're working on a traffic island. This project has been around since 2019. Our committee and the board reviewed it then. They made some changes, so we'll show you what they have. It's definitely an improvement. Next, St. Andrew's Plaza, the city is going to rebid that. Maybe the community board should put in a bid and we could get some street fair money out of that.
I like it.
There you go. So that's happening. We did have a brief discussion about another ongoing issue that is really being handled mostly by transportation, to relocate some bike racks on Duane Street away from a restaurant, but the proposed location is adjacent to Duane Park, and those people are very uneasy about that. So more to come on that. And the final items were related to what was I going to say? Black History Month, I'm sorry, where we had first Ranger Jim talk a little bit about the African Burial Ground, which, as you know, is on Broadway, also at Duane near the Federal Building. But we had a much longer, more informative and, very good presentation by somebody that few of us were familiar with. His name was Kamau Ware, and he runs an organization called Black Gotham Experience. And I think many of us were very impressed with him and his organization, and calling attention to the contributions that have been made that are unknown. And he does walking tours, he does artistic work that calls attention to the African diaspora, and it was just a good presentation. More to come. I'll give you a little more information at the meeting next week.
Thank you very much, Betty. And the reason why I went Paul to Betty is because
I just want to say one thing, Tammy, if I could. That was such a great presentation by Black Gotham, and kudos to you for getting in there and having that presented. It was amazing. And I think we should talk about because they work with the South Street Seaport, we should think about when we actually open up for meetings again, thinking about trying to get a meeting there.
Well, yeah, don't worry. They will, in an ideal world, we will have all of the cultural institutions come and present in CB1. And this will not be the first time that they are with us, and hopefully there'll be a greater voice in the community. All righty, Betty, you're up.
I have really nothing controversial went on this month to talk about. So if you want to just wait until tomorrow, I mean, until full board, it's
Awesome.
not a whole
You
lot.
got it. Oh, I love that answer. Thank you so much. Colin, you are the only one here from land use, quote, quote, small business. And then Pat has a big, robust agenda coming up. So Colin, do you have anything you want to report?
This is a surprise to me, so I'm completely unprepared.
I know.
apologize.
I apologize because Patrick is he's texted me. He's tied up at the moment. So I figured if you had any memory, I would ask you. If you don't sweat it.
I apologize. Although you and I
No
do have to chat about the transition to
Yep.
committee.
Yep. Okay, so we'll go to Pat Moore, and then I have a couple other updates that I can give. Go for
Yeah,
it.
I just wanted to encourage everyone tomorrow night. First, some police activity in the community. There's uptick in crime, and I want to encourage everyone, and please tell anyone you know to come. The first item on our agenda tomorrow night is the new captain from the 1st Precinct who will be coming to introduce himself, and it's probably a good time to ask any questions you have about what's going on. That's it.
So, and Pat has a robust agenda, so I do highly encourage people to come. And I think if Pat, you're done, I've got a couple updates. We received the testimony from Assemblymember Glick, as well as Assemblymember Yuleen about Governor's Island. Both of them are asking city planning to not support the current proposal in its current way and to wait for the next administration and do a far more robust community outreach and discussion about how to enliven the island with less development. Whether or not that happens, we don't know, but we did receive the testimony from both of them, and we will share that out in our newsletter. I have Borough Board meeting tomorrow morning at 8:30. It's always fun to see what's going on in all the other community boards. We have a meeting coming up this month after the full board with BMCC to try and get back on track to do some really good panels with them. So I think that is what I have to report from the chair for right now that isn't already been out there in newsletters. And if I hear nothing else, I'm going to call that the end of the reports, unless anybody has anything new that they'd like to bring up. 39, call it a night. Thank you, everybody. Lucian, you can kill the record button, and we are good.